Borough Hall, the Brooklyn Book Festival. This is Lenny for the LMS Extra Show.
With a sustainable economic system that benefits all people.
I'm not sure that I could add to that except to say that I concur, but one of the things that I was thinking when you were, it's interesting that you started your book with a glossary because, as you know, it's all about having people understand the language. One of the things that's a key element of our book is explaining the real cost of cheap food and how our food system completely lacks transparency, much as our financial industry does. And as we're seeing in our food system, the more people demand transparency. I have an 8-year-old daughter, and she has 2 rules when we go to the supermarket. One is, if she cannot pronounce an ingredient in the ingredient deck, it doesn't go in the cart. And 2, I don't know how she got this, she's only 8, but she has the rule of 5. If there's more than 5 things on it, she doesn't want it to go into the shopping cart. The more ingredients you have, the less transparent the food you have is. As financial instruments become farther and farther removed from actual relationship between a bank, you look at that old Jimmy Stewart movie, where they lend the money from a community to fund, your money goes to fund that person's store, which goes to fund, this person's, car. When you completely abstract a financial system and you have no connection to where your money goes and who benefits and where your money comes from, then you create a host of problems because there's no personal responsibility. And it's the same thing in food systems. The more abstract our food system is, the more when food producers don't actually know who's buying their food, the less responsibility they have for the quality of that food. And the more that you are unaware of who's making your food, the more abstract that the relationship becomes, and the more at risk you are, as we see time and time again with food recalls across the state. So that's where I see a connection to our work.
Did we have any questions that somebody might want to ask? I think because we have to break this into one. Yeah. Okay, so did you guys hear it? We'll just repeat it.
Yeah.
So debt and inequality and debt in the Great Recession.
Well, one of the great sources of debt is there are many different kinds of debt. Okay, one kind of debt is when capitalists lend to each other. That's not the debt that we're talking about here. The debt that we're talking about is when capitalists lend to workers, and in fact, and workers are increasingly in contemporary capitalist society increasingly discovering that their wages and working conditions are becoming more and more sources of poverty instead of wealth. Okay, so in fact, what's the discussion that Piketty and others have developed is very fundamentally related to debt and to the indebtedness, the increasing indebtedness of the working class in the United States and in Europe as well. So there's no doubt that as productivity increases and wages more or less have remained flat, what begins to happen is that it's very clear that capital, for example, is accumulating at a much higher rate than ever before, partly because of, in fact, the inability of workers to, in fact, get what they deserve. So the debt has been a way in which working class families have been able to get by the rough times, only to face rougher times. So this is the basic connection that, yes, must change. It's one of the aspects of contemporary society that must be transformed. What we're suggesting is that there are many ways to get at it, but one way we think is very important, and it's our political gamble in a way, is to say that debt is one. The ability to resist debt is one important lever for social transformation at this point in history. It's not the first time the struggles around debt and debt resistance go back thousands of years, and there are many periods in history, both in Europe and the Middle East, where the issue of debt, the struggle of debtor and creditor, have been basic forms of struggle, of class struggle. What we're saying is that, and what we're observing is that, in fact, the questions of debt and credit and the relationship between the debtor and the creditor class are quite basic now to the way in which classes struggle with each other. And many of you, I think, could attest to this, because it's a very basic way in which increasingly more and more people in the United States feel a certain kind of slavery. There's wage slavery, and then there's debt slavery. And both kinds of slavery are very much in evidence in the United States.
Thank you.
30 seconds.
Yes.
One of the things you have to also look at, national debt, sovereign debt. 1929, when the stock market crashed, it was because of government deregulation and Wall Street fraud. In 2008, it was the same thing. There were crimes committed. There were conspiracies to deregulate, do away with Glass-Steagall. The idea, and there's many writers. If you Google this online, you will see a lot of people writing on this besides Mike Payne. So the idea is also, what is legitimate debt? And that's one of the things that puts people, animals, and the environment before profits. Right now, corporations look at us as liabilities. They want to use our labor. They look at the environment as a liability. Polluting is much more profitable. Having animals in containers is much more profitable. We have to really come up with a political economy that will put people, animals, and the environment before profits. I think that's beyond capitalism, what they can do.
Okay, the one sentence response to your request is, well, free your tongue. It's time now for all of us to turn to each other and begin to deal with our fundamental fears concerning debt. And it's an important first step, and it's something that can be done, and it can be the source of a tremendous amount of knowledge that we need right now. So, as I said, free your tongue, learn the language that the creditors are now using, and use it against them. In fact, this is exactly what we are doing in Structure.
All right, let's give a round of applause to our authors today. Thank them all. Frankenstein's Cat Cuddling Up to Biotech Brave New Beast. Local, the new face of food and farming in America, and the Debt Resisters Operations Manual. Our authors will be over at the signing booth now if you'd like to go over and join them there, perhaps get their books and read more. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Hall, the Brooklyn Book Festival. This is Lenny for the LMS Extra Show.